Hello, everybody. Welcome to World Edition. I am not your host. I'm Nick Pellavita, but I'll be here until Mark gets his computer up to date so that he can tell us what's going on in the world right now. From what we've seen, of course, there was the train wreck the other day in Athens, and they're trying to figure out, hey, what happened to that? And then also, the minute Turkey lost 50,000 people to the earthquake, now it's over. All those dead people we just don't talk about anymore. And we had an election here in Chicago, which the current mayor lost. So there's going to be a new mayor in the great city of Chicago. And of course, there was a airplane turbulence, which sent 17 people to the hospital in the Texas area. But I can tell you that Lufthansa pilot was flying over parts of the United States. They may not be aware how bad flying into those clouds can be. They said they were at 37,000 feet, but the question is where. And with the new modern avionics, they should have been able to dodge that unless it was what they call clear air turbulence. Then that's next to impossible to dodge. So with that, that's kind of like, which means it's not a big news day because World War III hasn't taken place. But later on today, we'll also have, the Wall Street Hackers will be on, and also the Energy Show. So I can bring in the host with the most and see if his computer and his technology is working, Mark Lee, to see if he can update us on the news. I actually watch this almost every day because I want to get updated on what's going on in the world.
Well, and I can update you slightly. The computer is getting in its regular position and all of that, but phone technology also works as well. But one of the things that I can tell you is that, which actually surprises me, because we used to have a show about this on a regular basis, but I was checking out some of the news from LinkedIn, and one of the things that I saw was that dollar stores, Dollar Generals, dollar stores, Family Dollar, all of those kind of stores are actually in trouble because they apparently do not pay the best in wages, and apparently they're overcrowded because they're getting all these supplies that people are getting, and then of course they're in certain poor neighborhoods, so they are under some fire. And apparently they also, because they are competitors with CVS and Walmart, want to get into the drug trade, so they want to get into the pharmaceutical trade as well. So I know that we used to have Lynn Shepard on that ran one of those dollar stores and everything up in Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly. But I was just wondering what your thoughts are, because when I saw that, it actually caught me slightly off guard, because I do know that dollar stores are the staple of a lot of communities, and there were some communities like out in the country and other places that are quite happy to get a dollar store in their neighborhood so they can get the supplies. But you don't want to be having safety hazards, which apparently some of them are being closed, and some small country towns and even some cities and others are saying not in my neighborhood, and we know how that can be, and all in that kind of way. But I was just wondering your thoughts around it.
It's cheap stuff, Mark. I mean, the thing is, if you want to get some stuff and you don't want to pay an arm and a leg for it, you go to the dollar store. So I don't see anything wrong with the dollar store, but but it doesn't. Not everything costs $1. That was the whole idea. So some things are more than $1, but overall, they do a lot of transactions, and it's very low cost. And if you want to buy certain goods, it's the best place to go, especially if you're having anything. You're having a party.
If you're having a party or something like that, then you might want to get into that. Like I said, it looks like the computer is actually starting to come in, so I'll come on the regular computer in a second. But you want to bring in Lee Newton Rhodes? Maybe he's got some thoughts around dollar stores as well.
News across the nation or across the world that he can share with us.
I'm not really sure that you call it a dollar store anymore, but the serving sizes are getting smaller too. But to Lori Lightfoot, why did she lose that election? She's
Well-
saying she lost because she's a woman, she's gay, and she's black.
No, it's because crime doubled. Hello. Okay, and so the
Doesn't she
thing is
get that?
that's a metric you can't deny. I mean, the people in Chicago are really happy with 600 murders a year, where basically 2 people a day getting shot and killed, you know, and she didn't have a plan to address that, or at least a plan that worked to address it. So out she goes. You know, I mean, one of the important things is safety, and obviously that's not a safe city. I'm not going to go to Chicago. When come on, Lee. I used to live in Miami when we were averaging like 7 murders a day. And the place was burning. You don't want to go out into the city when people are being shot all the time. And I took one of my friends around. Of course, I did because I was a young punk, and showed him the problems. I mean, you could just literally drive around. This is back in the late 70s, early 80s. You could literally drive around Miami, see people getting mugged off the street. So I said, "Oh, look at that guy getting tar beat out of him." I saw just in one day telephone poles rammed through people's cars. I mean, it was a complete disaster. Why would anyone want to go to Chicago when
Nick, those are fair questions, but is it the government?
that does stuff like that?
Is it incompetent government that's causing this, or is it the breakdown of the family, secularization? What's the reason that so many cities are so dangerous?
Probably all the above. In other words, the thing is, there's not one thing to point to it, but a lot of it does have to do with upbringing and what you're just describing. Break down the family, mentorship. In other words, people aren't created to be criminals.
No,
this
yes,
is a long- this is a
I'm not going to defend
long-term-
Lori Lightfoot, but how much of the problem really was her fault?
Well, look, no matter where you're at, if you're in a leadership position, the buck stops there, baby. Okay. So whether she likes it or not, she's vicariously liable. And so the electorate booted her out. Okay. And rightfully so, the way I see it, because your number one job, at least like even when I've been on these homeowners,
Is safety.
is safety. Yep. In other words, you wouldn't believe we even paid way more than we should at Carolina Trace Country Club for safety. And why these people were neurotic about gated communities, having a security guard run around, all this other stuff. Okay, obviously Chicago isn't, and it's reflected in the metrics, you know. So with that, it's now become an unsafe city, and there's no excuse for it. One police officer did something really cool, I thought, the other day. She goes, "How do you keep crime down?" She goes, "We do unconstitutional stuff here." Okay, there was an old Supreme Court case, Terry versus Ohio, stop and frisk. We do it. In other words, she basically on TV said, "F you to all you gun fanatics and your Second Amendment and your right to not be stopped." Okay, unreasonable search and seizures. We're going to do it anyway. Okay, and
A lot of the crimes, though, I think are repeat offenders, where these judges are just letting people off for
yeah, right.
no bail or low bail.
Yeah. And you got to think about it. The police get tired of it too. So what?
Like, why should they bother?
What happens is she, as the head police officer, I was shocked to see her admit that. How do you keep crime under control? She goes, "We ignore the Constitution of the United States." She said that in national TV.
I don't think you need to do that. I mean, DeSantis said during the riots, you know, they won't stop the riots. You know, the first brick, you're out of here. No tolerance, 0 tolerance for rioting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. You know, public protest, okay. Rioting, not okay. And this really does go back to the training of people all the way back to elementary school. Okay, you know, our kids are just not being properly educated, trained. Also, it goes all the way back to breakdowns of the family. And so there was I watched this crazy movie the other day called Minority Report, which was really weird. I haven't seen it. It's been around 20 years. And they're talking about how you stop crime by predicting crime in the future. We don't do anything even close to like that. In other words, you could probably...
You mean the thought police?
Pardon?
You're talking about the thought police?
Oh yeah, well, basically what they were, it was kind of weird because it's science fiction. People that were in tubes that were predicting the future. But basically, we don't actually do enough of demographic analysis to actually, or what they call predictive analysis, to actually predict that this person will basically commit a crime. If we did, we could actually come up with the demographics and say, look, this person is headed on a track that they're going to end up committing a crime. We're just
Nick,
not. We're
We do that.
not interested.
We do
We're-
that when we arrest criminals and we let them go. We know there's a good chance that certain criminals with certain behaviors
we're
will.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, the thing is, what we're interested is putting a Band-Aid on the wound, but not figuring out how the wound was created. And this is just the way the government is reactive, not proactive when it comes to that. I can guarantee you, and they don't do a really, you know, when you have a health problem, the doctors like to do this huge history of your health to find out, you know, how the problem evolved. Now it comes to your mental health or your predictive analysis to crime. We don't do anything. Okay, this guy committed a crime. Let's throw him in jail. Not saying, okay, let's start from the beginning. Okay, where were you born? Okay, were your parents together? What were you trained in doing? Okay, how did you come? We're just not interested. You know, we're just interested in, okay, crime committed, throw them in jail, put more police on, shoot people, stuff like that. But we're not really interested in solving the problem. If we were, then your friends in Congress would be holding hearings, not on the January 6th, but basically Crime Wave Dave in America. They would be holding hearings on things that are important, like the oxycodone phenol addiction and deaths, not on Hunter Biden's laptop. So what happens, we have a big misallocation of resources in terms of our leadership.
In fairness, though, they can do both at the same time because both are concerns.
Yeah, but you only have so much time in a daily. Okay, so the
That's
thing is,
fair.
you got to prioritize your time. Like I said, the prioritizing of time in Washington D.C. Just really doesn't exist. I guess priority takes place when a lobbyist.
Well, I disagree. They do prioritize their time for what they want to do.
Hey, dude! A lobbyist comes down, they drop a big pile of money on your lap. Then all of a sudden, your time becomes prioritized toward the
Right.
lobby. All right. And I actually did have a friend of mine who was an attorney. He's now disbarred and was in jail and all sort of stuff. That usually happens. Again, predictive analysis. But he was telling me he got senators' attentions by walking into their office and dropping paper bags of money in their lap. And they took it. And these were not unknown, well-known senators. One of them actually ran for president. Now, the problem with the paper bag money, I can't prove it. He told me this. I actually believe him. Okay. But the thing is, can you imagine? First of all, you have to have a lot of gall. You go to a senator and you have a meeting with the senator and you leave a
They're
paper
donations.
bag with cash in it, you know. And he did have the senator's attention. What can I tell? Today,
Undivided. Good morning, Sasha.
legal channels.
Hello.
Hey, Sasha, we're talking about bribery in America. There's so many legal channels to do. You don't
Of
have to
course.
drop off paper bags anymore. Oh, Sasha, we're talking about the great state of the United States of America, and of course we ignore what's going on in Ukraine and World War III because, frankly, until the atomic bombs hit, we don't really care. In other words,
But Nick, I know that you're following publication The Hill, right?
The Hill. I have not read that. I'm familiar.
There's a big story was published yesterday which says Pentagon says no signs of systemic misuse of U.S. equipment. House lawmakers on Tuesday pressed the Defense Department on how U.S. officials are managing oversight of security assistance to Ukraine, raising concern about corruption in Kyiv and weapons being diverted on the international black market. And Colin Kahl, for example, the Pentagon's Undersecretary of Defense, hold the House Armed Services Committee. There was no evidence of diversion of the billions of dollars U.S. assistance supporting Ukraine against Russian invasion. We think the Ukrainians are using properly what they've been given, Kahl says. So again, we can go both ways. Say that he wants to get even more money pumped into Ukraine. That's why he says so. And then other people are saying, there is a corruption or so on. I'll tell you, this is very callous and a gross procedure. They already put all the auditors and everybody else. So far, they haven't found out anything in a country
Sasha?
which is losing thousands of people a day. This is incredible, really. Yes.
Sasha? In all fairness, they say they haven't found anything. Have they looked? As a CPA, as an auditor, when we audit companies, and Nick would know this, we can't come just there on day one at the end of the year and say, we haven't found fraud, all the control, we haven't found anything inappropriate. You got to look for this. A lot of these firms, they fought Fortune 500 companies, they have full-time auditors.
They would not make a statement that they don't have any improprieties from.
But they didn't say, what I heard is they didn't find anything. Okay.
Here's the other problem. It's not really money that's being transported over Ukraine. It's HIMARS, it's tanks, it's munitions, etc. Okay, so now all of a sudden the Ukrainians are getting tanks and HIMARS. Is there a market that they could sell it? Sure, they could sell it to the Russians. The Russians are right next door. They'll buy the HIMARS. Why won't they sell it to the Russians? Because the minute they sell the HIMARS to the Russians, you know what the Russians are going to do? They're going to take the HIMARS and shoot them and kill them. So the odds of corruption taking place is actually pretty low. If they get tanks, they're not going to go, we can make a lot of money selling tanks. I got a buyer. There's a Russian. He'll buy it because the Russian's going to turn around and shoot him with the tanks. Okay, so.
But what's the most interesting thing? The most interesting thing is
there's more markets than just the Russians.
The public is now split in two. All the Trump crazies, they're saying there is corruption, you cannot send any money, stop doing that, and so on. But there is another so-called Reaganist Republicans. What they're saying, including, of course, McConnell, he opposes defense cuts, calls for substantial increase, and he believes that they don't have, Ukraine is not getting enough U.S. weapons.
Let's also get real on the monetary.
Hold on. And Graham now saying, Senator Graham, Biden administration decision to withhold F-16s from Ukraine beyond disappointing. So what are you making out of our friends Republicans?
So, Sasha, let's get real on the money thing here. First of all, the United States military budget is like $850 billion. Right. The total budget of Russia is like 79 billion. Our budget is more than 10 times more than Russia. That's just the money that we have. We don't need to do anything except to cut a small piece of our pie, and send it to Ukraine, like 1/10. We'll destroy Russia because Russia's military budget sucks. It's only 70 billion. We 850 billion. You give me 850 billion, I can buy a lot of toys. They only have 70 billion. Their toys are going to run out. It's not even be close. So that's the reason they have to rely on China, who China has the second largest budget. It's around 350 billion. They have to rely on China because, frankly, Russia's broke and they have no way to make any money except sell their oil to China. And they only have two cities. There's Moscow and St. Petersburg, if you want to call Vladivostok a city. And that's it. They don't have major cities over there. We have New York, we have Washington, we have San Francisco, we have Los Angeles, we have Chicago, we have Detroit. I mean, we have like 100 major cities. They have two. They're not even close. The only thing
Nick, Nick, we have all this going on. We also have a world leader that apparently, he's prepping for a major conference, and they've got some turbulence in their area as well. We probably could send some weapons to some of his folks that are protesting him and everything. But I didn't realize that Brazil's Bolsonaro actually has Orlando as his home base. So apparently he's living in Orlando, and this was an article in the Orlando Sentinel. So they're saying that, while he's over there in his country, because some people have compared him to Trump, go to hell in a handbasket, he's actually living over there in Orlando with DeSantis.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, Mark. When I was at the University of Miami Law School, we had a lot of international students from Brazil and Venezuela and Colombia. And Venezuela is the real problem child that we don't understand, because they moved to, hey, we're going to become a communist country. And remember, Venezuela has the largest, as Chris Gregory, I've been around for a long time, so I'll imitate him, the largest oil reserves in the world. It's not Saudi Arabia, it's Venezuela, yet they're broke. How did they manage to do that, besides U.S. sanctions, which never help? It's because all of a sudden they go, well, we're going to become a communist state. Everybody's going to share everything equally. And unfortunately, the capitalists who know how to work the machines go, that's fine, we're gone. And all of a sudden the machines dried up. and the
No,
oil
yeah,
dried up, and the money dried up, and Venezuela dried up. You just can't treat people like that, and that's
no,
the
you
problem
can't do
with
that at
Venezuela.
all. Hey,
They
Lee,
go,
I've got a
okay,
question to ask Lee and
socialism for
everything.
everybody. Everybody's going to be treated equal, and all the people that are
No, I got a question to ask Lee.
work
I'm
80
gonna
hours a week quit.
Yeah, and I was getting ready to get a pay question as well.
Good morning, Mark.
There's a pay story that's very interesting as well. But I just mentioned Brazil actually got a neighbor around the corner that's from here
Brazil is
and
our second
everything.
watched.
But apparently Brazil has a title of a job that maybe we need it here in the U.S. because we oftentimes talk. I know I talk about it some. Shaquille brings it up and other things, but we talk about the divide, whether it's class or race or economics or a number of other things that go on, even gender and orientation. But apparently in Brazil there is a racial equality minister, and Anel Franco said that she never planned to be a politician. That was actually her sister's thing, but 5 years older than Ariel, which is the lady's name, Ariel Franco. Marielle was the one that was passionate, decisive, and a born activist. So apparently she was so much of a born activist that she got assassinated, and that's what drove her sister to get back into politics and everything. So y'all talking about some of the political things and what is or is not allowed in the political lanes. Apparently this one was a very active one and all of that. And then her search for justice thrust Aniel, I said Ariel earlier, but Aniel into the national spotlight. So yeah, apparently she was spending her time being a competitive volleyball player and an English teacher. And now she's a full-time activist and the head of Brazil's racial equality ministry. So do we need a racial equality ministry here in the United States? I know we got some civil
What are
rights.
what's the job responsibilities? What do they do? What do they accomplish? How does that add value to society?
I guess that you go around and make sure that in Brazil that you are making sure that all of the ethnicities, and Brazil apparently is a very ethnically diverse society as well,
Right.
are being treated fairly and justly, no matter
What does that mean? Treated fairly. When you get on an airplane, do you care about what race or sex or gender the pilot is? When you go into a hospital, do you care about the doctor? No, you just want the best. Who cares about that stuff? That's small people do.
Well, like I said, I mean, part of it is also making sure that I can't say that because there is equality issues that are very much still in the forefront, even in 2023. If you look at the book Martin Luther King wrote called Chaos and Community, Where Do We Go From Here? Some of the issues that he was talking about when he wrote that book, and that was in the 60s, are still very
I understand. Mark, there's a downside also. What does she do when certain minorities are overrepresented? Sorry, we have to start hiring you guys? There's too many so-and-so represented in pick the field of commerce or pick, in education or in sports. Sorry.
How about basketball? Okay.
No, but
Yeah,
don't
basketball.
go there, Nick. That is the workers. That is the workers side of who is doing it in basketball. Have you looked at the ownership and the management of basketball? It is not as fair as y'all like to make it out to be.
I agree with you that.
Yeah, Mark, that's a fair point. But the players, do you want more short, fat, white people playing in the NBA?
Would that be fair?
Very interesting basketball game.
Would you love to see basketball at
I don't even want to call them overweight.
purely black sport?
And
Players are black, owners are black, managers are black, everybody's black. Is that your vision of the basketball? Now,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's got to be some more equity within that. I mean, part of the problem, even in corporate America, and Nick knows this as well.
Take white managers, fire them, and hire black managers.
Hey, Nick, and I'm going to bring up a point because I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine and everything.
You don't get a chance to play in the NBA.
But Nick, I've got to ask you this.
No chance in the NBA.
No, you have no chance in the NBA, but I do have to ask you this. We are here in the Research Triangle Park area, and I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, I think it was either yesterday or the day before and everything. In 2023, like it was in 1960, like it was in 1940, and like it was in a number of other times that we have not gone by. If you look at the C-suites, that's the corporate America and everything, and the management level, who is at the head of the management cycle, vast majority of them, and who is doing the worker bee work, meaning whether that's ARA, which is Guardsmark, which is security, ARA, which I believe is cafeteria work, and FTS, which is maintenance.
Well, and would you assume that there are a number of well-qualified black people who are pushed away in favor of white people to become managers and the CEOs and so on in the company. Is that a fair conclusion?
Not necessarily that, but I'm just saying that because I think, I mean, merit is what Dr. King said is about, and I'm also about merit as well. But I'm also saying that there's got to be some better ways to have fairness and everything, because it makes no sense to me. Y'all want to talk about the 1%, and y'all oftentimes talk about the athletes and everything. The amount of billionaires, and I just found this out recently, that are African Americans and minority is ridiculously low. It is like, even with all the athletes and all the entertainers and all that, one thing, it is a known fact that within 5 years, most of them go broke because they don't know fiscal management and financial management. So I do agree with the point that Nick brings up and everything, but it's like 0.03%. It's some ridiculously low amount of African Americans that are in the so-called 1% and all in that space and everything. So you cannot tell me that there are not enough qualified people in that community to make it in that level. Now, is there some kind of good old boys network? I would say that it's still out there.
And Mark, I have two questions for you. One question, we had a guest on yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what did he say? He's a man who happens to be black. He doesn't live his life based on his skin color. Okay, you can do that if you want, he was saying, and play the victimhood, and it's fine. No, but that's not what he chose to do. And the other one, how do you define who's white? At the end of the day, are we all not shades of gray? Well, some are blacker, some are lighter. Nobody here is 100% black or white, I don't think.
No, that's
even Barack Obama, he's a mixed breed. Okay, biracial.
Problem. I mean, that is very true. But actually, we're all black. If you want to go back to the start of society, because society started in Africa and everything, and that's just a known fact and everything. And I've actually heard that Bill Nye recently brought up a similar point, because he was bringing up the point that part of the reason of even the different skin tones is because of people's migration and how they had to adapt to where they moved to.
In America today, more so than 50, 100 years ago, is intermarrying. So what do we do with all these people who are product of biracial, parents?
Yeah, but that's still that's a whole other conversation we can get into, because there is some acceptance in a lot of communities, and actually I know that for a fact because I have some family members and I have dated across the racial divide and as well. But there are some that it is acceptable. There are some that you can get cross-eyed from both sides, and I'm not going to say that that's not on just the side of the European Americans, but it is also some cross-eyes that you can get from your own community as well. And I saw that as early as when I was in college, and that was in the 80s, to even sometimes now when I've gone out. So I can't say that it is as widely accepted as some people would like to think it is, and all in that space.
There's this lady who came out, I believe it was this week or last week, this lady, wasn't it? It was Angela Davis who came out. She has ancestors from the Mayflower.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear.
Slave owners,
ancestry.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at
it was in the news.
Hey, Lee, hold on a second. That's another issue as to where the ancestry is coming from. If you look at most of those ancestry, like 23andMe and a number of other ones, they're coming from countries like, I want to say, Switzerland and a couple of other countries like that. So if your pool that you are testing against is predominantly European American, won't just about everybody that goes through there have that? I'm not sure there's enough controls in there to make them as reliable as I think that they should be and everything. Because it seems to me that every time you turn around, somebody's finding out that they've got European ancestry. And I'm not saying that they don't, but I also have some questions about, and I think I brought it up to Chris, and he didn't actually disagree with me about where the because you have to test it against something. So I forgot what.
No, I understand, but Mark, this one's reliable. It was in the media. I just posted just one short clip of it, whatever, some headline over in the private chat. Black Panther communist Angela Davis, who teaches that the U.S. is built by racist colonizers, faces calls to pay reparations after genealogy shows reveals her white Puritan ancestor arrived in America on the Mayflower.
Oops.
This has been confirmed with numerous sources.
Such a problem to be faced with the sins and the sorrows of your ancestors. So the other day, because I was going to slap Shaquille around a little bit on this one, my sister did some sent their Ancestry.com our DNA, and I'm a direct descendant of Robert the Bruce, the King of Scotland. So I should be complaining I want to sit on the throne of Scotland. Okay, and then my other ancestor is William of Orange, which used to sit on the throne of what I call it, United Kingdom and the Netherlands. So I should be on the throne of, well, guess what? The world doesn't work that way. First of all, there was what they call primogeniture, which means the eldest son gets it. What happens to all the other kids? Talk to Harry about that. So what happens? All the other kids have to go somewhere else, and some of the ones, my ancestors, they got on the Henry Hudson Half Moon thing and went to the Dutch New York. But guess what? I can't lead my life saying, "Wait, I'm a descendant of royalty. I should be sitting on thrones." It just
yes, but you are a descendant of royalty and all that. But
so I was going to tell,
we have novelty.
I was going to tell
Nick, I did have a question for you, not so much on that, but on another part of that and
you
everything.
are what you are. The world is what it is. And I'll tell you also in New York, I was applying for a job years ago at the University of Miami. They did a background check. The guy goes, he was a big New York firm. They go, Florida, Florida, Florida. Why do you want to work in New York? Big law firms, big pay, the New York. They go, forget it. They didn't give me an interview. They went like slap. That happened with every New York firm. The only way I got to work in New York, I worked there for 5 years, is I actually, as an independent person, created my own company. We went to New York and we put in half-page ads in the New York Times, quarter-page ads in the New York Times, and basically got some of the best and brightest of their clients. I stole them from the big law firms in New York. So in other words, my client's the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. I got him, Bill Rosenberg out of New York, founder of Bausch & Lomb, founder of Kimberly-Clark, all these people by doing seminars in New York and just taking them from the big law firms. So sometimes your best revenge isn't to sit there and say, okay, because I'm from Florida, by the way, I'm rejected automatically. Just go in there if you want it, go ahead and take it. You just have to work around the system.
Not just sometimes, all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. That's the best advice.
Look at the reason this network exists is CBS went like this, and rightfully so. I'm not going to say they were wrong. They're rightfully so. They go, your programming is not going to replace NCIS in the evening, and we have no room for you in the daytime. Okay, so we have to do another way. PBS goes, are you kidding me? Everybody wants to watch Downton Abbey. We buy all of our product from the BBC. Okay, so what happens? All the doors close. You just don't have a choice, a lot of cases, and that's how entrepreneurs are born. Like the gentleman who was on yesterday.
Like I said,
entrepreneurs are born out of desperation.
No, Nick, they're born out of desperation. They're born out of desperation. I have said several times Nick, I've said several times, and I'll say it again on this particular show, that I know very much about entrepreneurship, and I know that how it can be born out of desperation, but it can also be born out of heritage and pride as well. Because I've also mentioned twice, and I'll mention it once again on this particular show, that my grandmother saw that there were no African Americans getting their books from a library, so she created the Richard B. Harrison Library in Raleigh, and she literally did it knocking on doors at people's houses in order to get the money that she needed to get that library built. And that was
the door was closed, and right on her that she opened up the door herself, because
that's what I'm saying. She opened up the door, and the same with my mother and dad, who saw a need for certain music that they loved. Part of it was they like some classical. Sorry to say that, Sasha. They like jazz more than that, and they like definitely some blues and R&B and some other things. But they definitely had respect for classical, and they also saw that some issues that were not being addressed in either the poor communities or the minority communities were not being covered by PBS and things of that nature. So that's why I kind of have respect for what you and Kim have done, because it reminds me of what my parents did in the 80s, because they created that station. It was on for about 12 years because they saw a need, and neither one of them had a experience in the radio. They didn't have any background in radio whatsoever. So the mom was a guidance counselor and dad was a trained engineer, but they were like, wait a minute, this is a need, so we're going to service that need, and all in that kind of space. So that's how they.
But this is all being outdated by now, because you know well that on YouTube you can find all classical music and all jazz music and any Latino music and any kind of music. If such music that you're looking for is not on YouTube, it means nobody needs this music, and probably you are
you can find the music on YouTube, but then there's the whole issues around the merit of the music that you find, and the YouTube police. We talked about that on the media.
Oh, you select. You don't listen. Everything what is there. It will take 200 years probably to listen to everything. So
no, I'm just saying that, but they will ban you really quickly. Nick is running that.
We get banned all the time. Matter of fact, we got. I think the Black Business Expo got banned because quote hate speech. We couldn't find any hate speech. I don't have no idea what they were talking about.
No, there's no hate speech, and it's actually not that particular YouTube. It's actually our YouTube that was the one that got hit and everything. So it's the food for thought, and it could have been anything from our conversations to the Black Business Network conversations to a number of other conversations. But it's actually the food for thought one, which also the Chess Show was on for a minute. That was the one that was bounced. But like I said, there's always an end around as you know,
Mark,
as well.
I mean, Nick might want to respond to this.
All the time.
These people with like YouTube and the other organizations, social media, who are censoring people for so-called misinformation, don't they know that's a fool's game? Because what was yesterday misinformation, according to them, such as the lab leak theory or mask work, what have you, is today this science. So they're censoring stuff that they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, well, we get censored all the time, Lee. Okay, I mean, by big tech, it's almost like
for what purpose?
Complete battle, and I'm going like, what did we say that was wrong? Yet at the same time, YouTube allows heads to get cut off.
No, I understand, Nick. But even if what you said is wrong, why do they care?
I don't know. Well, that's a good question, because the thing is, they want you have to ask them, but usually when you ask them, you're asking a robot. And when I checked our Vimeo 30-day, we have a 30-day how many people are watching our shows, and we're right now around 262,000.
And Nick, you're an attorney. When you go to court, one of the attorneys is wrong. He's either guilty or he's innocent. Yeah. What are you going to censor the other guy because he insists his client's innocent?
Yeah. Well, remember, the private companies, they can do what they want.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying it makes no intellectual sense. That's my point.
It doesn't make intellectual sense. A lot of things don't make intellectual sense.
But they are private companies, and they can basically do what they want. And then they went to Congress.
Yes, but not that is true. But what Elon Musk is showing into the Twitter files is they were doing it at orders of the FBI. FBI was basically directing them what to do, who to censor and what to censor. So that's just, it's not really private companies anymore.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of non-profit companies and everything. Hey, Lee, I did have another quick question.
Has a big influence on our lives, and this is something that the people in the South probably need to understand. Like, we live in the Research Triangle area of Raleigh-Durham, and you hear Morrisville every day when Steve gets on. No one even knows where it is except Steve.
Does it exist? Is it really in Morrisville?
It doesn't exist. It's a city it's a small city next to the Raleigh-Durham airport.
It's a virtual town.
It is.
It's actually the airport town.
Venture capital in the Raleigh-Durham area, 0.075%, not even 1%. Venture capital in San Francisco Bay Area, 40%. There just is no money here. The South is poor. See, one problem people don't get: the Civil War decimated the South, and it's still decimated. I mean, it really is still having the financial
question for you and everything. You brought that up a couple of times, and I've had friends of mine that are very apprehensive. I see Shaquille's here. Maybe he'll join us on this and everything. But what is the dangers around venture capitalists? Because I've heard a lot of folks that are apprehensive when you mention venture capitalists. They have some very serious reserves about venture capitalists, and I don't know enough about venture capital to know why folks would have those fears and everything. So if you can, one, tell me what those fears are, if you know what they are, and maybe alleviate those fears, because I do know that there's some people that are in the what they call decentralized land, and they definitely don't like VCs, and there are others that are more into VCs, but I'm not sure exactly.
There's two sides to every story. There's the VC side, which I've talked to, which is true. 90% of the startups they invest in will go broke. Okay. And they don't like doing it. No one likes to put their money in a place where 9 out of 10 times you're going to lose it, except Shaquille. He does that all the time. But the rest of us, we don't do that stuff. Okay. That's problem number one. Problem number two, the people that are asking for the money think, for whatever reason, that their idea is going to take off and they're going to make zillions of dollars. and that's not true too. So you have two groups of delusional people. Well, actually, I think the startups are more delusional than the VC people. The VC people know they're about to get taken. The startups think that the VC people are there to hand out money. That's not what they're going to do. They're looking to get returns on their money. Okay. So you have people.
But, Nick, isn't the flip side of that the world of nonprofits? Because I was having this conversation as well recently. But a lot of people think that they are getting money, like the foundation that my mom ran several years back and everything, that they're getting the money, that they're going to get the money forever. But Mom taught me many years ago that they really want you to get off that dole. They want you to slide off and become more more self-dependent and all in that kind of way. But a lot of times they don't think of that planning, and they kind of like go without the knowledge that if you get, let's say, a $50,000 grant or everything, and it's a sliding scale, that you're gonna just like get the grant the next time around. And a lot of times that is not the case, because the nonprofit world and the foundation world really wants you to get.
Not-for-profits are different, but you also have to look at which not-for-profit it is, because when I was living in Boca, a friend of mine who didn't want to get close to me because he knew I was an attorney, and I figured that he didn't want anyone to really know what he's doing. I said, "What do? You're living in a super big mansion here in Boca." He goes, "I run a non-for-profit." And I said, "Well, how do you make?" He was making $4 or $5 million a year in income. I said, "How do you do it?" Well, what happens? I fly around the state of Florida telling old ladies to donate to the non-for-profit. We keep 99% of the money, as me being the salesman. And so he's making $4 million a year for a not-for-profit. Now, some commentators will say that's capitalism at its best. Some commentators say we don't need any regulations for the not-for-profits. But I am telling you that some of the not-for-profits are scams. I mean, where the person who's talking to you and selling you to donate is making a huge percentage of the amount of money that you're donating to, and they're basically unregulated.
Nick, you might be amazed at how much the CEOs of like United Way and all these other organizations are making at these not-for-profits.
No, but Nick,
we've discussed that. We've discussed at length the finances of the Sierra Club, and hardly any of that money actually goes towards environmental issues. Almost all of it's going towards political issues, or going towards executive pay.
But Shaquille and Nick, I do have a question to ask based on corporations and everything, which
they're doing, because they're not really just the Sierra.
But Nick, hold on a second. How much of that pay? Because I do know for a fact that I've got some friends that have tried to start up nonprofits, including some that have nonprofits now, and I work for a couple of nonprofits as well as a for-profit company. But one of the things I've got is that there is this notion of setting aside a certain amount of the money of the nonprofit for the pay of the leadership, including the staff. So how do y'all feel about that? Or is that something that the nonprofit?
Well, 90% of it. These not-for-profits, it's not this is not an American phenomenon. This is all over the world. These not-for-profits are supposed to be trying to do all these things that they claim to be about. And oftentimes we see that money going to things that have nothing to do with the cause that they said. Now, obviously, people need to be paid. Obviously, the people who work in the call centers that ring you up and, all of that, the people that work there, they need to be paid, that people need to eat. They've got office expenses, etc. Yeah. But when you start to see, people that are on multi-million-dollar packages, and the charity's giving 5%, which is the legal minimum in most jurisdictions every year, all these charities are investing that money in the markets and giving 5% of the returns away every year. I mean, come on now.
No, but the flip side of that, but what if there are
scams? I mean, they're just scams.
No, there can be scams, but what if there are upgrades? I know some nonprofits that have upgraded their security, upgraded their sound systems, upgraded a number of other things, and there are some people that might say that is not a necessity, but I mean, you've also got to do upgrades around a lot of nonprofits have to do upgrades around the handicapped and accessibility issues as well. So those can be serious costs that are in there as well. Because if you've got a 2-story building and there aren't access points, or a 3-story or 5-story building, then you've got to build those access points. And Shaquille, you've done some work in the construction space with some of your investments and everything. You know that's not a inexpensive proposition.
Well, again, I don't know anything about construction, but again, normal operating costs is not the issue. The issue is that very little of the money that people, give. I mean, you talk about little old ladies that, give like $10 out of their pension to a charity. Very little of that money actually ends up going to where it's supposed to go. Operating costs for a charity is reasonable. And I think that when you start talking about multi-million-dollar executive pay packets for the very top people in those charities, I think that doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. I can tell you what their arguments are. Their arguments, we could make that in private industry, so we got to pay what.
Go to private industry.
I
go
know,
to private industry. Don't be sitting there. Don't be sitting there and telling the rest of us that you care so much about the environment and you're some environmental group, and then your executives are earning 60 to 70% of the money that the charity brings in flying around on private jets. I mean, give us a break. And I don't know why people put up with it. I really don't.
So best practices in the nonprofit world is 13 cents to raise $1. It costs to raise $1. Okay, so the 5% distribution requirement is set by Congress in the United States for private foundations.
Right.
And so if they want to distribute more, they can. But most of those foundations are considered endowed funds. They're not. So as a result, they have to have a reasonable spending policy to be able to give every year without eroding their base. That's the idea. They want to be able to continue on their charitable work year after year after year, not give it all away. That's the purpose of those policies. Some of them can earn a lot more than that, but a lot of times they can't. And there are all kinds of different charitable structures, like program-related investing and other kinds of things that permit all kinds of innovative projects between nonprofits and the for-profit world to help improve and expand different technologies and ideas to help benefit humankind. Now, if you want to have Congress increase the distribution amount, that's one argument. But the nonprofit world in the United States is unique to the United States and has tremendously benefited our society. So churches and schools and others can be able to support their charitable goals. Now, I agree that it shouldn't be gaining exorbitant salaries. I think that's abusive. I think you're right there, Shaquille. I think that's absolutely wrong. $1 million salaries for some of these hospital executives and bonuses is absolutely outrageous, right? And same with American Red Cross and others that shouldn't be paying so much. But United Way, I think they paid their executive $350,000.
But Dan, along those same lines, there are some nonprofit organizations in some industries. You just mentioned hospitals, but there are also a lot of folks, and I didn't find this out until recently, and it actually shocked me, and I was not pleasantly shocked, but there are also some for-profit and nonprofit organizations that are even in our prison systems and everything. And apparently some of our athletes, I did not find out from the person that revealed this to me, are actually involved in some of that investment. So that is one of the things that they choose to invest in. And while they might be talking about some things that they are finding unfair, then they go turn around and invest in some of these for-profit and even some of these other kind of profit structure prison systems as well. So that is problematic as well. So I definitely agree that the for-profit model and the nonprofit model on some of these services that are out there are wrong. And I'm glad you brought up endowments, because I do know that a lot of times endowments are created. And I know that I've been on some theatrical boards that have been involved in endowments. There's actually a lady here that just recently passed, Lucia Poe, and I'm pretty sure that part of her estate will be going toward some endowments because she was very active in the art community here and all in that way. But I'm always concerned when I hear about these endowments that the people that are running the endowments are understanding what the requirements were with the endowments and are also following the wishes of those that created the endowment in the first place.
Well, I've worked in the nonprofit community.
I noticed that Chicago has had another election.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. We talked about that earlier.
Well, I wasn't here, so I want to know what everyone's thoughts and feelings are on Lori Lightfoot's demise.
Goodbye. I mean, she failed. She failed the city of
She's a
Chicago.
Lightfoot. What can you say?
You know, I don't know if you saw that, but I know you're heading to Chicago shortly, Shaquille. But I mean, it's crime wave Dave up there. 600 murders a year. I mean, 2 people. By the time we're done with the show,
Nick, is that anything new and is bad politics or anything new in Chicago? I went to school in Milwaukee and I know Chicago's history and everything, and I don't think the history has changed that much. I'm actually surprised that
Well, it went from
lost
300
more because
but the crime rate went up all over the country. So
you're going the wrong direction. Okay.
the crime rate's gone up all over the country. The crime rate went up in New York, but Kathy Hochul managed to win that election pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy
Yeah, but she's a
Hochul
governor.
somewhat-
The mayor lost.
Oh, the mayor of
Yeah,
Chicago
the mayor.
lost
De
too.
Blasio lost.
Yeah, Blasio, that piece of work, right?
Hey, just really quick, I
Blasio.
see we've got Stephen. We're going to wind down and everything, but there was something else I was going to bring up. The lovely folks in the union world, and I know that Shaquille, you're flying, and you might enjoy this. I doubt you're flying this particular airline that I'm going to mention. I don't think that Nick is the biggest fan, and it's been a minute since I've been on a plane. But Delta Airline pilots have approved a new contract that will lift their pay. Speaking of lifting pay, by 34% over 4 years. A deal that's likely to shape contract negotiations now underway at other carriers. The agreement, which includes improvements to benefits and scheduling, won the support of 78% of Delta pilots, according to their union official, and valued at more than $7 billion through 2026. The pay bump is a sign of pilots' increased leverage, with many carriers struggling to staff the flights and a travel boom. So,
Mark, does it mean that the airfares will go substantially higher than they are now?
I imagine that they're going to go higher. I mean, you got to find some way to pay these pilots.
Yeah, probably. But the thing is, Delta is a very well managed airline. It's a primary carrier here, you know, and I don't mind pilots getting paid more. I don't want to fly on an airplane with a pilot who's worried about going broke tomorrow. Okay, it's just not funny. I do think that, like the guy who's the CEO of Norfolk Southern, paid $5 million a year. He ain't worth it, you know. And see, this is the problem.
So you're okay. You want to make sure the pilots aren't worried about going broke tomorrow. But I suppose you're perfectly okay with the new diversity hiring of pilots, where things like skin color and sexuality and gender expression is more important. It's more important for getting a job as a pilot or an air traffic controller than actually your academic results.
Pilots should be mentally stable, and anybody that is not mentally stable should not be a pilot.
But I like to see competency. Okay, is the pilot competent?
No. Your side of politics is throwing competency out. The only thing that's going to matter is
you're right.
who do you have sex with? Who do you have sex with? What's your skin color? What's the gender expression? Do you go by ze/zer pronouns? That's the stuff that's going to matter.
That's a good
it does. That's the way it is with you
and I
guys.
sit together on this one, buddy. See,
Shaquille, in the future, when you pick your seat, you can pick the gender of your pilot and the race of your pilot too.
Oh, hey,
Probably.
and your
Probably late, but white man won't be a category. You'd be able to pick.
Now, hold on a second. Now, what if it's the opposite way? And I brought this up before, and I said that one of
You
the
Democrats.
Nick is a legal person, one of the primary legal schools here in the area, and I don't think I'm saying
Howard.
They've got some good folks that have graduated, and everything is actually North Carolina Central University. I think that our governor went there past governor went there at one point, and a number of other folks have gone to that school because we got 10 HBCUs here in North Carolina. The law school is considered a top law school along with Campbell. I mean, you can have a top law school that is a small law school as well and everything. So, but my question is, there is a white student that is suing Howard University for racial discrimination. And on the flip side of that, there are a lot of folks, and that's why I just mentioned the lawyer, because there was not, the governor, because there was not a black governor, and a number of others that have gone to Central because Central has a very strong legal department and it's very strong faculty and everything. So people are going there because it's a good law school. But it is on an HBCU, and I don't know of any suits there as of yet. But I know actually I knew one of the deans, and I actually know one of the premier attorneys over there because he's a civil rights attorney, Irv Joyner. I'm gonna try to get him to come on one of our shows soon, and all in that kind of way. But what is y'all's take when there's kind of like the flip happens? Because that's what's going on at with the white student at the black at Howard University.
I think you really have to know the facts of the case because like in NC Central, I had a friend of mine who went to law school there, got his law degree there. He's a white guy, and I didn't even know it was an HBCU. Frankly, I didn't know much about HBCUs as a institution until I moved into the deep South here of North Carolina. But in Atlanta, they didn't have all this racial stuff. In Florida, certainly not. In Washington State, not. But then when you go into the deep South, there's still Civil War people here. I mean,
wait a minute.
Wait. Nick, Morehouse is in Atlanta.
They did have it in Atlanta.
Conversation.
Mark, is it Morehouse in Atlanta?
Morehouse is in Atlanta, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to live in Atlanta. I mean, but it wasn't a big conversation. The racial conversation wasn't.
No, but I'm saying Maynard Jackson and Andrew Jackson.
Atlanta
but you know what, Nick? But you know what, Nick? I think that the world, people are getting sick and tired of all this woke stuff. They're getting really sick and tired of all this stuff where race and gender and all this stuff is at the forefront of the conversation. And when I criticised Jacinda Ardern and Steve Rout said, "Is there anything you can say that's nice about her?" The fact that she actually said after 2 terms as the Prime Minister of New Zealand that it was because of the inherent sort of patriarchal, toxic masculinity of politics that that she had to step down and she didn't have enough time for a family and this and that. Really? And Lori Lightfoot sort of tried the same thing on that the reason that she performed so badly is because she's a black gay woman in America. Like, really? So what? That didn't stop her. The sexist racists of Chicago were happy to vote her in.
Yeah,
but then they decided that they were going to vote her out. I mean, it's just silly. These people won't take responsibility. They won't take any responsibility for where their policies have failed or where they have failed to connect with the community or represent the community. And it's really insulting to everybody else when they try to play that card, that the only motivating reason why people won't vote for somebody is because of skin color or race color or gender. It's just not true.
Well, I think she didn't get elected because she's an idiot.
And they said that they did not believe that that Pete would ever win because of his orientation in a national election, not just because of the policies, but because he is a gay man that is married and everything. So they definitely felt that he would not win, and they also felt that there were some other cases. They actually felt that a woman would probably not be elected because they're not sure that society is ready to elect a woman to national office. I'm not sure that I buy that argument, but that is a fair.
Even females. Even, and Shaquille, she lost. She got less than the proportion she should have gotten had her own race voted for her. So it's her own people who are not voting for her.
Exactly, but she's still going to play. But she's still going to play the card, right? So she plays the card. She plays the card, and she's celebrated for look at me, I'm the first gay black woman, to be the mayor, and then it's like, why am I the first person to not to be re-elected in 40 years? Well, it's because I'm a black gay woman in America, and look how horrible the country is. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I can tell you now. I can tell you now, the prediction is that Justin Trudeau will be the next world leader out after Nicola Sturgeon and Jacinda Ardern, and I think that's probably
he's going to use the same excuse.
Hey, so guys, I got to get ready for closeout.
It's about time for your closeout and all of that.
Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow for the whole hour. I've been traveling today, but real quickly, tomorrow we will. First of all, I want to wish everyone a happy Read Across America Day in the U.S. This is Dr. Seuss's birthday. And the change is reading can spark change. So make sure.
Wasn't he censored?
Yeah, read a book.
Yeah, he was censored.
Yeah, he was. He was canceled.
Read a book.
Yeah, hang on, Dr. Seuss, where they've changed all the words in there because of his racism and his sexism and all that. That's Dr. Seuss.
He was a great author, and
obviously he's not if he needs to be censored and rewritten.
Change. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Women's History Month. I'm going to open up my monologue with that. I'm a few days behind. We're going to talk about women trailblazers, Women's History Month. International Women's Day is, so hopefully we'll get some women analysts to come on the show, and then President Biden's about to veto his first bill. Going to talk about that regarding climate change or something about employment laws or something. So lots of really good stuff to talk about. But thank you all so much. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition. And
I have a quick question. This Women History Month, is that you're talking about black women or white?
no,
women?
all women, women's history.
All
Month.
women.
Celebrating- celebrating-
Well, hang on. But what
about
about trans women and non-binaries? Because like the question of that movie, what is a woman? What are we talking about here?
This is women.
Can we define woman?
Women.
I think
Well,
if
what's
they
a
have
woman?
the equipment, they aren't a woman.
Women.
Well, that's a whole debate. But Shaquille and
Thank you guys.
Dan
I gotta
and
run.
Stephen, I know
Take care,
we're
Steve.
out of here. Y'all will be glad to know that I actually had a Republican woman from Asian descent on the show yesterday. So we had a fun conversation, but she is actually running in Beverly Hills. So I'll try to see if I can get Shirley Liu to come on the new show. And she's actually running as a Republican, but she was on the online dinner party yesterday and is definitely very faith-based and all in that kind of way. So
Shaquille,
Amen.
email me about your
Interview
plans
if you
to
did
North
not want
Carolina. I've got a really busy weekend this weekend. Are you coming this week?
No, because I have to rush back to Dubai because I'm going to the First Ladies Convention and then I'm coming back to North Carolina.
Okay. I'll
First
take care.
Ladies Convention. Are you a woman?
First
I
lady.
most certainly am.
Thank you all so much, Pete.
He's
Be
going to
careful.
come on wearing this
You can be whatever you want, Shaquille.
All right, we're going to get on out of here.